issue with current strategy MMO games is they tend to drive new players away. On the other side, a more casual approach becomes boring for those who want to compete and dominate. With Arkheim, Realms at War, we found our solution to this problem. Our goal was simple, to create a game that you can play casually with your friends, but also in a competitive setting. To achieve that, we focus on several main principles. The town is your personal progress and is safe. It's your economic backbone and you can build it up in whichever way you want. Because it's safe and it cannot be destroyed, it acts also as your safe haven. So you can take risks. If you take a hit, no problem, you can be back on the battlefield in no time. Speaking of battlefield, we wanted to make different strategies possible so you can find your way to victory. We also wanted to avoid long-lasting stalemates to create a game full of action. And finally, we boosted the collaboration aspects of our game, so working together as a team is really important to win this game.
The key decision in designing Arkheim was the shift from player versus player combat, which you know in classical strategy games, into team versus team combat, where realms of players fight other realms.
It was a big challenge coming up with the art for Arkheim, because the world of elves and dwarves, high fantasy, is very familiar to everybody, but we wanted to give it our own unique twist and produce something fresh and new. We knew that if we just copied what had gone before, it would look like any other high fantasy game. So we wanted to keep the good familiar things, but otherwise do our own unique twist on this genre. So that meant looking at the elves and dwarves and developing unique traits and technologies that they may use instead of just trying to explain everything with magic.
A round of Arkheim lasts 10 weeks. During this time we have 4 different moon phases, and those moon phases will unlock new islands and other stuff in the game. The most competitive players will be able to ascend to the highest islands and compete there against each other for resources and power. But more casual players will also be able to enjoy the game because they won't be driven out by the competitive players.
So to make our elves and dwarves familiar and yet different, uniquely Arkheim, we looked at early 20th century art movements. So the dwarves have a very rectilinear, ordered look that is inspired by Art Deco and a little bit of brutalism in the architecture as well. Whereas the elves are all organic shapes and asymmetry and flowing lines, much more akin to Art Nouveau, also from the early 20th century. Arkheim is a big game, and it has different areas in which you play. And for example, we have the battle map, which we've made 3D with these pieces as if they're on a tactical tabletop. When you're in the village, that's a completely different space. In there, that's your own place where you build everything up, and it's highly detailed, it's beautiful to look at because you spend an awful lot of time there. And gluing everything together, all these different spaces, is of course the UI and something we call narrative art.
The map in Arkheim is a very functional and visual space. You can see movements of your warlords and of enemy warlords directly on the map, and you also see where fights are happening or conquests are being made. So this is a very interesting space to watch. Warlords in Arkheim are the typical generals you lead into the battle. With each warlord you can choose the troops you want to assign to him and the items you want to give him, and each warlord has a special ability, and this all together leads to very interesting decisions.
So narrative art is the name we've come up with for all those linking pieces of artwork that come up in UI windows and so on that helps push the story along. These are illustrations really, and the inspiration for those were from book covers, high fantasy and sci-fi book covers from the classic era of the 1960s, 70s and into the 80s as well.
Arkheim is also a true cross-platform game, so you can play it on your computer, tablet or smartphone, which you can play casually with your friends or highly competitively.
Ultimately, I think we have succeeded in producing a fresh and immersive fantasy world called Arkheim.